Welcome. Tonight, we drift into a gentle story about one of the quietest inventions in human history. Something soft, simple, and patiently crafted, the first whisper of paper. This is not a lesson, not a lecture, just a calm, sleepy tale told slowly, like someone speaking beside a warm lantern at the end of a long day. So settle in, breathe softly, and allow your mind to loosen, like pages turning in a breeze. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Long before paper became common, people searched for ways to record their thoughts. They carved symbols into bamboo, brushed ink on silk, and etched marks into clay. But these materials were heavy, costly, or difficult to store. In a quiet corner of ancient China, artisans began experimenting with plant fibers, softening them in water until they formed a smooth, gentle pulp. From this simple mixture, the first sheets of early paper slowly emerged, thin, delicate, and full of possibility. Sheaf of rice crafting the first pulp. In small workshops where sunlight filtered softly through wooden slats, workers soaked bark, hemp, and rags in warm water. They stirred the mixture with long wooden poles, the motion steady and calming. As the fibers loosened, they blended into a milky, quiet swirl. Each vat held the promise of countless future words, yet the process itself was peaceful, almost meditative. Drying the new sheets. Once the pulp settled into thin layers on woven screens, artisans carried them to airy courtyards. The sheets were laid out to dry beneath gentle breezes. As they dried, they transformed from fragile films of water into smooth, flexible pages. Craftsmen lifted each sheet with care, knowing these delicate surfaces would soon hold ideas, stories, and teachings. Paintbrush ink meeting paper for the first time. As paper became more refined, calligraphers gathered to test this new material. They dipped brushes into soot-black ink and let the bristles glide across the surface. The ink sank in softly, creating lines that felt both fluid and permanent. For the first time, writing felt effortless, like thoughts flowing directly from the mind to the page with barely a pause in between. Amphora paper entering early archives. In quiet halls where scholars worked under lantern light, early paper found its home. Scrolls were rolled and tied carefully, stored on wooden shelves beside bamboo and silk documents. The lightweight sheets allowed scribes to copy texts more quickly, expanding libraries and preserving knowledge for generations yet to come. Compassed the gentle spread along ancient paths. Caravans traveled across deserts and valleys, carrying everything from spices to pottery, and among these treasures, small bundles of paper. Merchants shared its wonders in distant towns, showing how light and smooth it felt. It traveled without noise or ceremony, simply passing from one curious hand to another, quietly changing the world. Leaf fluttering in wind, paper woven into daily life. Over time, people used paper for simple, everyday tasks, writing letters, wrapping small goods, marking important dates, teaching children their first characters. It became part of kitchens, markets, temples, and households. Humble yet essential, it supported life the way a gentle breeze supports a drifting leaf. Candle evening softens the pages. As lanterns flickered in quiet homes, families read from paper scrolls before bed. The gentle rustle of pages turned slowly in the dim glow, creating a sound as calming as distant rain. Each sheet held not just ink, but the soft labor of many hands and the quiet history of its own making. You may feel yourself settling a little deeper as the story moves with calm and balance. If you'd like to continue, I'll guide you softly into the next chapter of paper's long and peaceful journey to paper in the hands of early scholars. As night settles softly around us, imagine quiet study rooms where scholars sat with gentle focus. Their robes brushed the floor as they leaned over low wooden tables, ink stones resting beside them. The new sheets of paper felt light beneath their hands, almost like holding a whisper. Each stroke of the brush glided smoothly, allowing their thoughts to wander across the page with calm intention. The soft scratch of ink against the surface created a rhythm, steady and soothing, like rain tapping lightly on tiled roofs. Temples embracing the written word. In peaceful temples surrounded by bamboo groves, monks found solace in the ease of writing on paper. They copied sutras at dawn when mist floated low across the courtyard stones. Every sheet they filled became part of a quiet effort to preserve wisdom. The rustling pages and distant ringing of a bronze bell blended into a gentle harmony. Here, paper was more than a tool. It became part of meditation itself, helping thoughts settle like dust on an untouched floor. Wind-faced paper traveling with the wind. Traders carried it across vast landscapes, but it was the wind that seemed to carry its spirit. Breezes drifted through markets where merchants demonstrated its soft flexibility. People marveled at how it bent without breaking, how it accepted ink without complaint. In peaceful towns along riverbanks, the scent of wet pulp and drying sheets mixed with the aroma of warm tea. Every new region that welcomed paper discovered new ways to fold it, shape it, and let it become part of local life. Yarn, the art of papermaking refined. In quiet workshops, artisans experimented with new fibers: mulberry bark, linen rags, rice straw. Each offered a slightly different texture, a new personality to the page. Craftsmen dipped screens into vats with practiced ease, lifting them slowly so water dripped in long, calming trails. The pulp settled evenly, forming sheets as smooth as still water. Drying racks lined the walls, each sheet held in place by thin wooden slats, waiting patiently for sunlight to finish its work. Books, paper, transforming storytelling. As paper became more available, storytellers found new ways to share their tales. Instead of relying on memory alone, they wrote them down in graceful script. Travelers carried these written stories with them, spreading myths, histories, and daily wisdom from town to town. At night, families gathered around small oil lamps, unrolling fresh scrolls to hear stories both old and new. The gentle flutter of the paper, as it unfurled, sounded like a lullaby, encouraging everyone to settle deeper into the soft embrace of evening. National park paper drifting into the rhythm of everyday life. It wrapped herbs in market stalls, carried love notes between shy neighbors, and recorded the quiet births and departures of family members. Children practiced their first characters on small scraps, each line slightly uneven but full of hope. The sheets absorbed thoughts joyfully, never protesting or demanding attention. They simply served, quietly and faithfully, becoming part of daily routines as naturally as morning light touching a windowsill. Crescent moon, the night grows calmer. As we drift deeper into this gentle history, the world outside your room becomes softer. The story continues to flow slowly, like ink spreading across fresh paper. You can allow your breathing to settle, your shoulders to loosen, and your thoughts to move as lightly as a turning page, the paper spreading to distant lands. As time went on, paper traveled beyond the borders of ancient China. Carried by traders, travelers, and curious minds, it crossed mountains and deserts, reached distant kingdoms, and settled gently into new cultures. In quiet caravanserais along desert paths, merchants would carefully unwrap bundles of paper, letting the thin sheets feel the dry, warm air. Travelers marveled at its lightness, its soft texture, and the way it accepted ink with such ease. It seemed almost alive, responding to every brushstroke with quiet patience. Japanese castle adoption by scholars and scribes abroad. In distant lands, scholars eagerly embraced paper for learning and record-keeping. Libraries began to replace heavier bamboo or parchment with these lighter, more flexible sheets. Imagine a quiet study hall where students sit cross-legged on wooden floors, practicing characters or letters, their brushes gliding in soft, measured strokes. Every sheet of paper carries both the effort of its maker and the care of the one writing upon it, forming a bridge between cultures separated by miles, yet united by a common love of learning. Fountain pen evolution of writing tools alongside paper. As paper spread, new brushes, pens, and inks were created to complement its gentle surface. Artisans experimented with soot, charcoal, and natural dyes, mixing them with water or oil to produce ink that flowed evenly and predictably. Calligraphers and writers found a new rhythm with every stroke. The brush danced lightly, the ink settled calmly, and each character took shape as though breathing into life. The soft scratching of brush against paper became a meditative sound, comforting in its regularity. National park paper in everyday rituals. Paper did not remain only in the hands of scholars. It became part of the daily rituals of ordinary life. Families wrote letters to relatives in distant towns, folded carefully and tied with simple string. Children learned to fold paper into toys and decorations, letting small creations flutter in the wind. Temples used paper to record prayers, creating delicate charms hung from trees to sway gently in the breeze. In kitchens, scribes recorded recipes, and in markets, traders noted debts and exchanges. Paper became quietly woven into every rhythm of human life. Herb craftsmanship and care. Workshops everywhere refined the art of making paper. Artisans learned which fibers made the strongest sheets, which pulps created the smoothest surfaces, and how drying conditions affected the final texture. Vats of pulp swirled slowly, hands moving with repetitive care, producing sheets that dried evenly under sunlight or lantern glow. Each sheet was a labor of patience, soft to the touch, strong enough to endure, and beautiful in its simplicity. Scroll paper carrying stories through time. With paper, stories could travel farther, last longer, and reach more people than ever before. A poet in one city could write verses that were copied and carried across mountains. A scholar's careful notes could inspire students decades later. Letters between loved ones crossed villages and rivers, carrying warmth and thought. Each sheet held a fragment of life, a whisper of a thought, preserved gently for the future. The quiet durability of paper allowed memories and knowledge to drift slowly through generations. And for paper as a companion of daily life. In homes and workshops, paper became a silent companion. It recorded the mundane alongside the extraordinary, the first steps of a child, the blossoming of a flower, the gentle falling of rain. It wrapped goods, protected small treasures, and served as a canvas for expression. Its soft surface accepted both art and calculation, prose and poetry, instructions and letters. It became an intimate part of human life, quietly observing and supporting daily routines. Imagine the quiet workshops, the fluttering sheets drying in the sun, the calm hands of scholars tracing careful characters. The story of paper, like a soft breeze, drifts across time, carrying knowledge, beauty, and peace with it. As centuries passed, paper slowly found its way into the hands of people far beyond its origins. Traveling along trade routes and carried on ships across calm rivers, it arrived in towns and cities where it was received with quiet curiosity. Scholars and scribes explored its possibilities, discovering that this light, flexible material could hold thoughts and ideas more easily than the heavier scrolls or parchments they had known. Lantern-lit rooms became filled with the gentle rustle of paper, a soft sound that seemed to echo the rhythm of evening itself. Amphora libraries filled with gentle knowledge. In the quiet halls of early libraries, paper began to replace older materials. Shelves lined with scrolls of bamboo and delicate sheets of silk gradually gave way to stacks of paper, each sheet soft to the touch, yet sturdy enough to last. Scholars moved carefully along narrow aisles, selecting works to copy or study. The soft crackle of opening scrolls mingled with the faint scent of ink and wood, creating an atmosphere that invited slow reflection and contemplation. Fountain pen scribes at work. Scribes worked patiently, dipping brushes into ink and letting their strokes glide across the smooth surface of paper. In the calm light of oil lamps or the waning daylight from tall windows, characters formed slowly, deliberately. Writing became a form of quiet meditation, each line measured and thoughtful. The repetitive motion of brush and hand produced a rhythm that was almost hypnotic, encouraging both writer and reader to slow down, to dwell gently on each word. Herb paper in daily life. Beyond the halls of learning, paper found its place in everyday routines. Merchants recorded their transactions, children practiced letters on scraps of soft sheets, and families documented births, marriages, and small joys. In kitchens, recipes were copied carefully, sometimes with illustrations of ingredients. Paper became a companion to daily life, quietly supporting the flow of ordinary activities without demanding attention or causing disturbance. Artist palette art and poetry on paper. artists discovered the unique joy of paper surface. Delicate brushes captured the mist of mountains, the curve of rivers, and the petals of flowers in gentle ink. Poets wrote softly, composing verses that reflected the quiet beauty of nature and human life. In some households, these works were displayed or shared with neighbors, becoming part of a shared cultural rhythm. Paper allowed creativity to flourish, providing a gentle medium for expression that neither weighed down the hand nor hurried the mind. Yarn craftsmen refining techniques. Workshops continued to experiment with fibers and drying methods. Mulberry bark, linen, and other materials were combined in different ways, producing sheets with subtle textures and shades. Vats of pulp swirled slowly, hands moving with practiced care, lifting screens and letting water drip gently. Drying racks lined walls, and each sheet was treated with patience, ensuring it would remain smooth and resilient. The making of paper became a soft dance of rhythm and repetition, a quiet craft that demanded attention yet brought serenity. National park paper traveling with the wind and water. Paper often traveled alongside rivers, across plains, and over hills. Light and flexible, it could be carried by travelers on foot, by merchants in carts, or by ships over gentle seas. In every place it reached, people discovered its quiet utility. Letters between friends and family crossed long distances, carrying warmth, news, and memories. Traders recorded inventories, scholars copied texts, and artists painted delicate scenes. Each sheet was a small vessel for human thought, drifting softly through space and time. Paper arrives in early Europe. Centuries after its invention, paper slowly traveled westward, carried along winding trade routes, rivers, and quiet mountain paths. Merchants, travelers, and scholars introduced it to towns and villages where parchment and vellum had long been the standard. At first, people handled it with gentle curiosity. Its lightness, smoothness, and ability to hold ink with ease made it remarkable. In quiet European workshops, artisans began experimenting with local fibers, linen rags, hemp, and flax, learning how to create sheets that were soft yet sturdy. Each sheet felt like a small gift, ready to preserve thoughts and stories for the generations to come. Castle manuscripts and illuminated texts. In monasteries and quiet abbeys, monks discovered the serenity of writing on paper. Instead of heavy vellum, they could now fill more pages with prayers, psalms, and teachings. Candlelight flickered on wooden desks as brushes and quills moved deliberately across the smooth sheets. Some manuscripts were illuminated with delicate gold leaf and soft pigments, capturing tiny details of flowers, vines, or gentle landscapes. The paper seemed to invite care, encouraging each stroke to be slow and thoughtful, creating a rhythm that soothed both hand and mind. Blacknib scribes and everyday writing. Scribes in early towns and cities found paper remarkably practical. Ledgers, contracts, letters, and accounts could now be recorded more easily and carried without strain. In dimly lit rooms, they carefully inked each word, pausing to let the ink dry and to ensure each line flowed gracefully. The sound of quills or brushes on paper was soft and consistent, a calming accompaniment to the quiet life of trade, learning, and communication. Paper made record-keeping less cumbersome and more accessible, letting information drift smoothly from one hand to another. Paper in daily European life. Beyond monasteries and offices, paper gently entered homes. Families used it for letters that traveled to distant relatives, for keeping lists, and for teaching children to write. Merchants wrapped small items in paper, noting quantities or prices, and townspeople made small charms or decorations from simple sheets. The soft texture allowed ordinary people to interact with writing in ways previously reserved for the wealthy or scholarly, making everyday life a little gentler and more connected. Artist palette artistic expression. Artists discovered paper's unique appeal. With soft brushes or quills, they captured landscapes, architecture, and daily life in quiet detail. Sketches, poems, and drawings could now be shared and stored more easily. Small homes or workshops became spaces where gentle creativity flowed freely. Each sheet accepted ink without complaint, encouraging experimentation and calm reflection. Paper allowed imagination to blossom in slow, deliberate movements. creating works that could be enjoyed over time rather than in fleeting moments. Herb craftsmen perfecting European techniques. Paper-making workshops in Europe refined their techniques over decades. Fibers were selected, soaked, and beaten into pulp with careful attention. Screens and drying racks were used to create smooth, uniform sheets. Artisans worked with a soft rhythm, aware that the quality of each sheet reflected their patience. The subtle variations in texture gave each piece its own character, making every sheet unique, yet all of them soft and inviting. Paper-making became an art of quiet dedication. Scroll letters, stories, and gentle communication. With paper's growing presence, letters became a soft bridge between people separated by distance. Merchants communicated orders, families sent news, and friends shared stories. Each letter traveled slowly, wrapped or folded carefully, sometimes tied with string or sealed with wax. Opening a letter was a quiet ritual. The gentle rustle of paper revealing thoughts carried across towns, rivers, or mountains. Paper's presence in daily life allowed communication to become a gentle, calming experience rather than a hurried necessity. Crescent moon, evening reflection. As you listen, imagine the quiet of these early workshops and homes. Lanterns glow softly on wooden desks. Stacks of paper rest neatly in corners, and brushes and quills wait patiently for the next gentle stroke. The story of paper, carried from east to west, continues quietly, threading through generations and cultures with the same soft persistence as your own slow, calm breathing. If you would like, I can continue with the next part, tracing paper through the Renaissance, its use in art, literature, and the slow expansion of printing, keeping the same peaceful, bedtime tone. Paper in the Renaissance. As Europe moved into the Renaissance, paper quietly transformed the world of art, science, and literature. In small studios and sunlit workshops, artists sketched ideas, mathematicians recorded calculations, and writers composed stories on sheets that felt soft beneath their fingers. Paper allowed thoughts to flow more freely than ever before, and the gentle rustle of turning pages became a soothing rhythm that accompanied long hours of study and creativity. Lanterns, sunlight through high windows, and the occasional chirping of birds in courtyard gardens created a calm backdrop for the quiet work of human imagination. Palette artists exploring new mediums. Painters used paper to sketch preliminary ideas before committing to larger canvases. Delicate lines of graphite or ink captured the curves of nature, the sway of trees, and the glimmer of water. Some sketches were detailed enough to stand alone as small treasures. The soft texture of paper invited gentle experimentation, allowing colors and ink to settle evenly as the brush moved. Each stroke became a small meditation, a calm conversation between artist and material. Writers and poets. Poets and writers embraced paper for its accessibility and smoothness. Ideas that once had to be memorized or hastily carved into heavier materials could now be recorded slowly and thoughtfully. Letters traveled from city to city, and manuscripts passed between scholars and friends. The act of writing itself became soothing, as the pen or brush moved gently across the surface, leaving soft, deliberate marks. Paper encouraged patience and reflection, turning the simple act of writing into a quiet ritual. Classical building, early printing, and books. With the invention of printing presses, paper became even more central to human life. Sheets were stacked and pressed, slowly producing multiple copies of texts that had previously existed in single handwritten forms. The gentle thrum of presses in quiet workshops replaced the solitary scratch of quills, yet the process maintained a rhythm that was almost hypnotic. Printed pages carried knowledge to more people, but they did so without urgency, maintaining a calm and steady presence in libraries and homes alike. Paintbrush illustrated manuscripts. Even as printing spread, paper remained the preferred medium for illustration. Illuminated manuscripts and scientific diagrams were crafted with care, showing details of plants, animals, and constellations. Brushes and inks glided smoothly, producing work that encouraged slow observation and appreciation. Families and scholars would gather around these pages, tracing lines with their eyes, noticing each gentle detail, and letting the quiet beauty of the illustrations sink into their minds like a soft lullaby. Yarn paper in daily life. paper continued to weave into ordinary routines. Letters carried stories of family, news, and distant travels. Merchants kept careful accounts of goods, prices, and debts. Children practiced handwriting and drawing, learning slowly and patiently. Recipes, prayers, and small notes were all recorded on soft sheets, making life more organized yet more serene. Paper became a silent helper, present in every small, peaceful moment. National Park trading paper across countries. Traders carried paper across rivers, mountains, and seas. In quiet port towns, bundles of paper were unpacked and spread for examination. Buyers marveled at the smoothness and lightness, noting how practical it was for recording information. Paper was exchanged gently, valued not for its rarity alone, but for its quiet usefulness. It became a bridge across regions, connecting people through the written word in a soft, deliberate way. Crescent moon nightfall and reflection. As the day ends, imagine the quiet studios, workshops, and libraries where paper rests. Stacks of sheets await brush and ink. Lanterns glow softly, and the gentle rhythm of writing and turning pages fills the air. Paper has traveled centuries, touched countless hands, and carried ideas, stories, and prayers with calm patience. Let yourself sink deeper into comfort, letting the story and the soft presence of paper guide your mind toward rest and gentle sleep. If you want, I can continue with the next part, exploring paper's journey into modernity, its role in science, art, correspondence, and the quiet everyday life of centuries past, all in the same soothing, bedtime-styled paper in the age of exploration. As the world grew larger and more connected, paper quietly followed travelers across oceans and continents. Explorers carried journals filled with soft sheets, recording the shapes of distant lands, the gentle swell of waves, and the quiet movements of wildlife. Scribes copied maps and observations by lantern light, each stroke careful and deliberate. Paper allowed information to travel farther than the explorers themselves, preserving tiny details of the natural world, trade, and culture for those who would read them years later. It moved silently, yet its presence was profound. Fountain pens scientific observations recorded. Scientists and natural philosophers relied on paper to document their discoveries. Delicate drawings of plants, stars, and experiments filled page after page. The soft texture of paper invited patience, encouraging careful observation and slow notation. Sketches were refined over time, corrections made with gentle ink or pencil strokes. Paper became a companion to thought, letting ideas unfold at their own pace and allowing the natural curiosity of the mind to rest, breathe, and grow. Amphora letters and correspondence. In homes, paper became a quiet messenger. Families sent letters to distant relatives, travelers wrote notes to friends in faraway towns, and merchants kept records of trades that spanned countries. Each letter was folded carefully, sometimes sealed with wax, and delivered with gentle care. Opening a letter was a quiet ritual. The rustle of paper, the faint scent of ink, and the soft unfolding of a message across space and time. Paper carried warmth, news, and connection in the gentlest of ways. Artist palette artists embracing paper. Artists discovered the soft generosity of paper for drawing, sketching, and painting. The surface welcomed brushes, ink, and watercolor with patience, capturing subtle details of light, shadow, and texture. Studios were filled with the calm rustling of sheets, the gentle tapping of brushes, and the quiet contemplation of shapes and forms. Paper allowed imagination to stretch slowly, encouraging the observation of small moments, a falling leaf, a ripple in a pond, the curve of a distant hill. National Park paper in everyday routines. Paper quietly shaped daily life. Children practiced handwriting, merchants recorded prices and goods, families kept small journals of birthdays, blessings, and local events. Recipes were preserved, notes left for neighbors, and lists made for the simplest errands that each sheet, though small and unassuming, carried countless stories and details, blending into the rhythms of ordinary life. It became a companion, never intrusive, always helpful, and quietly essential. Craftsmanship and refinement. Papermakers continued their careful work, refining fibers and techniques. Vats of pulp were stirred slowly, screens lifted with patience, and sheets dried under sunlight or gentle warmth. Subtle variations in texture and color made each sheet unique. Artisans handled each piece with reverence, knowing it would soon carry thoughts, art, or stories. The craft of paper making itself became a meditation, repetitive, focused, and deeply calming. Herb paper as a bridge through generations. With every century, paper preserved memory. Letters, manuscripts, sketches, and notes were handed down from parents to children, from scholars to apprentices. Each sheet connected moments in time, carrying ideas and feelings softly across decades. It allowed human thought to travel farther, last longer, and touch lives in ways heavier or more rigid materials could not. Paper became a quiet witness to the everyday beauty of life. Crescent moon, evening reflection. As you imagine these moments, let yourself settle more deeply. Picture sunlit workshops, quiet libraries, lantern-lit studies, and soft sheets resting in neat stacks. The gentle rustle of paper, the calm scratching of pen or brush, and the patient folding of letters become a lullaby, guiding your mind toward rest. Paper's long journey reminds us that even the smallest, softest things can carry weight across time, connecting hands, hearts, and minds gently and quietly. If you like, I can continue with the next part, tracing paper through the industrial age, the rise of printing and mass communication, and its calming presence in everyday modern life, keeping the same sleepy, soothing storytelling style. Paper in the industrial age. As the world entered the industrial age, paper quietly transformed alongside factories and workshops. Large machines hummed softly in the background, rolling out sheets faster than ever before, yet the essence of paper remained the same: gentle, light, and ready to carry words, sketches, or plans. Workers moved with measured rhythm, feeding pulp into presses and watching sheets glide smoothly from rollers. The factory, though busy, held a calm pulse, a steady repetition that seemed almost meditative, like the heart of paper itself, flowing endlessly. Books becoming more accessible. With mass production, books could be created in greater numbers, reaching homes, schools, and libraries far and wide. Stacks of paper filled the presses, each sheet waiting to be transformed into stories, poetry, and knowledge. Families gathered in quiet rooms, opening books to discover worlds and ideas they might never have touched before. The rustle of turning pages became a soft, comforting sound, inviting slow reading and gentle reflection. Paper now carried not just knowledge, but a quiet intimacy, letting minds drift peacefully among its words. Paintbrush art and education. Artists continued to use paper as a canvas for sketches, watercolors, and diagrams. Students practiced handwriting, mathematics, and science on soft sheets, their pencils and brushes moving in slow, deliberate strokes. In classrooms filled with natural light, the gentle scratch of pen against paper became a soothing rhythm, a sound that accompanied learning without hurry or stress. Paper allowed creativity and thought to unfold naturally, supporting curiosity in a calm, steady way. Envelope letters and communication. Even in bustling cities, paper remained a gentle messenger. Letters traveled through postal routes, crossing towns, rivers, and country roads. Opening a letter was a quiet moment. The soft unfolding of paper, the faint scent of ink, the careful reading of words written by distant hands. Families sent news, friends shared stories, and lovers expressed feelings with a softness only paper could hold. The ritual of writing, folding, and sending letters became a small, daily meditation. National park paper in everyday life. Paper continued to weave itself into ordinary routines. Receipts, notes, diaries, recipes, and reminders quietly guided daily activities. Children learned to write and draw, slowly filling pages with stories and imagination. Merchants recorded trades and inventories, families preserved memories, and artists captured fleeting moments. Paper was never loud, never demanding, always soft, steady, and supportive, a quiet companion through the motions of life. Yarn refinement and craftsmanship. Even with industrial production, artisans still valued the subtle textures, colors, and qualities of paper. Special sheets were made for art, calligraphy, and formal documents. The soft pulp, carefully pressed and dried, carried both function and beauty. Hands guided brushes and pens across the surface with gentle precision, making every word, line, and sketch feel intentional and deliberate. The act of creating with paper remained a calm, mindful practice, connecting people to centuries of quiet history. Herb paper preserving memory. Through journals, letters, books, and sketches, paper preserved the intimate details of human life. The ordinary alongside the extraordinary, thoughts both small and profound, could all rest on its gentle surface. Generations connected softly across time as sheets passed from hand to hand, from teacher to student, from parent to child. Paper became a quiet guardian of memory, letting human experience drift peacefully through the centuries. Crescent moon, evening calm and reflection. As the night grows deeper, imagine quiet homes and studios filled with paper. Stacks of sheets rest patiently, lanterns glow softly, pens and brushes lie waiting, and the gentle rustle of turning pages fills the air. The story of paper, from its soft beginnings in ancient workshops to its steady presence in the modern age, reminds us of patience, care, and quiet endurance. Let your thoughts settle, your breathing slow, and your mind drift along with the long, gentle journey of paper in modern, everyday life. Today, paper continues to touch lives quietly, often without notice. In cozy homes, people write letters, make notes, or sketch small scenes of the world around them. Children fill notebooks with letters, drawings, and stories, practicing their skills and imagining new worlds. Even the simplest sheet of paper carries a softness and flexibility that encourages thought, reflection, and creativity. It is light enough to hold comfortably, yet strong enough to preserve moments for years to come. Books, and quiet reading. Books filled with paper remain a source of calm and comfort. Imagine curling up in a warm room, a soft blanket wrapped around you, and opening a book whose pages are smooth beneath your fingertips. The gentle rustle as you turn a page becomes a soothing rhythm. Stories, histories, and poems unfold slowly, letting your mind wander and rest. Paper carries these words with patience, allowing you to drift through ideas and worlds at your own pace, unhurried and serene. Artist palette paper as a medium for creativity. Artists continue to find joy in paper's quiet generosity. Pencils, inks, and paints glide effortlessly across its surface. Sketches capture the subtle curves of nature, the play of light and shadow, and the fleeting moments of life. Each stroke is deliberate yet soft, and every sheet holds both potential and memory. The act of creating on paper remains a meditative ritual, encouraging focus and calm, and giving both hand and mind a gentle rhythm to follow. Fountain pen letters and personal connection. In a world full of digital noise, handwritten letters and notes offer a soft, human touch. Opening a carefully folded letter reveals not just words, but a tangible connection across distance and time. The smooth surface of paper invites gentle handling, and the faint scent of ink adds a quiet intimacy. Paper allows feelings, stories, and thoughts to travel from one hand to another, creating bonds that feel deliberate, personal, and soothing. National park paper in daily rituals. Even the smallest uses of paper bring calmness to everyday life. Lists for errands, recipe notes, journals, and small reminders all offer gentle structure. Children doodle and learn, merchants record their trades, and families note special moments. Paper integrates seamlessly into life, quietly supporting thought, memory, and imagination. Its presence is steady, soft, and dependable, a silent companion to human experience. Ancient inspirations for paper. Long before paper became common, people explored natural materials to record thoughts. Bamboo strips were stacked and tied, clay tablets dried in sunlit courtyards, and silk was brushed with delicate ink. Yet all were heavy, costly, or cumbersome. In quiet workshops along rivers, artisans began soaking fibers from bark and hemp, beating them into soft pulp. Imagine the hands gently swirling the fibers in wide basins of water, sunlight glinting off tiny ripples, each sheet slowly forming like a quiet promise of what could be written upon it. Sheaf of rice, early workshops, and village life. In small riverside villages, families worked together to produce paper. Children carried bundles of soaked fibers, elders guided hands over flat wooden screens, and the sound of water dripping from wet sheets echoed softly in the courtyard. Smoke from small hearths mixed with the earthy scent of bark and fresh pulp. The entire process moved at a slow rhythm, dipping, lifting, pressing, drying. Every step invited patience, calm, and mindfulness, like breathing in harmony with nature. Drying sheets in sunlight. Once lifted from the vats, sheets were laid on boards or tied to frames to dry. Imagine a courtyard filled with rows of pale, translucent paper, fluttering gently in the breeze. The sun warms each sheet slowly, giving it strength and subtle texture. Villagers would walk past, letting fingers brush lightly against drying sheets, marveling at the softness and strength, the quiet resilience of each one. Even the children paused to watch, learning reverence for the craft through observation alone. Paintbrush scholars discovering the first sheets. When early scholars received these new materials, they were mesmerized by the sensation. Brushes dipped in ink glided over the paper with fluid ease, leaving smooth, dark lines that seemed almost to float. Letters and characters, poetry and small notes, all found their home on this gentle surface. In temples and study rooms, soft chanting mixed with the delicate scratching of brush against paper, creating a serene atmosphere of learning and reflection. And for paper and temples, in the quiet courtyards of temples, monks worked with paper daily. Scrolls filled with sutras, prayers, and illustrations of landscapes rested under lanterns at night. The soft flicker of light highlighted the fiber's texture, and every stroke of ink carried intent and reverence. Outside, bamboo leaves rustled gently in the breeze, and the faint ringing of distant bells added a lullaby-like rhythm. Paper became a silent companion to meditation, study, and prayer, recording not only words but the calm spirit of the people who used it. Compass travels along ancient trade routes. Merchants and travelers soon carried paper along winding roads and river paths. Imagine camels treading softly over sand, riverboats drifting past quiet villages, bundles of paper wrapped and tucked carefully under cloth. Each sheet traveled without noise, yet it carried immense potential. Letters, sketches, and calculations ready to enrich distant lives. People marveled at its lightness, its smoothness, and the way it accepted ink with ease. Paper spread quietly, patiently, across the continents. Wind faced cultural adaptation. As paper reached new lands, local artisans experimented with fibers, creating their own variations. Linen, flax, hemp, and even recycled cloth became new sources. Small workshops appeared in towns and cities, each producing paper unique to its place. Citizens discovered the joy of writing. Children practiced letters at home, merchants recorded trades, and scholars copied texts with care. Paper became part of daily life, a gentle medium linking creativity, memory, and learning across cultures. Fountain pen early libraries and study halls. In early libraries, shelves were lined with scrolls and stacks of paper. Scholars moved slowly, selecting texts to study or copy. The rustle of pages, the soft scratching of brushes, and the faint scent of ink blended into a calm symphony. The soft, rhythmic turning of sheets created a soothing backdrop for long hours of reflection. Paper allowed ideas to persist, teaching, inspiring, and connecting generations in quiet, enduring ways. Artist palette artistic exploration. Artists began using paper for sketches, plans, and illustrations. Flowers, trees, and landscapes were captured with gentle strokes. Small studies were drawn before painting larger works, each sketch holding beauty in simplicity. The surface of the paper invited patience. Each brushstroke was deliberate, unhurried, and meditative. In sunlit studios, the light played softly across the textures of the sheets, encouraging calm focus and quiet contemplation. National park paper in daily routines. Paper gradually integrated into ordinary life. Families used it for letters, recipes, journals, and notes. Merchants recorded goods and prices. Children practiced handwriting, and small crafts were created from folded sheets. Even in mundane tasks, paper added a layer of gentle organization and comfort. Its presence was unassuming yet essential, quietly supporting routines and preserving moments of human life with softness and care. Yarn refinement and care. Paper making remained a skill of patience and observation. Artisans learned how different fibers produced varied textures and how drying conditions shaped each sheet. Vats of pulp were stirred slowly, screens lifted carefully, and sheets dried in sunlight or warm air. Every sheet bore the imprint of thoughtful hands, each line of fibers holding subtle uniqueness. This craft became a meditative dance, a rhythm repeated across centuries, a quiet devotion to patience and care. Scroll letters and communication. Letters traveled along roads, rivers, and across seas, carrying words between families, friends, and scholars. The act of writing became a gentle ritual. Folding, sealing, and sending sheets carefully, while opening them created small, intimate moments of wonder. The faint rustle of paper and the soft scent of ink enhanced the experience, making communication a slow, soothing, and mindful exchange. Crescent moon, evening calm. As night falls, imagine these quiet workshops, lantern-lit libraries, and sunlit courtyards. The stacks of paper rest patiently, waiting to hold thoughts, sketches, or letters. The soft scratch of pen or brush, the gentle rustle of turning pages, and the calm rhythm of making, writing, and preserving all encourage your mind to settle. Breathe slowly, feel your body relax, and let the journey of paper across centuries lull you into rest. Paper in medieval Europe. As paper traveled west, it arrived quietly in towns, monasteries, and small villages. Parchment and vellum had long been the standard, but paper offered a lighter, gentler alternative. Imagine monks walking softly across stone floors, carrying freshly made sheets to quiet scriptoriums. The soft scratch of quills on paper echoed in the empty halls, blending with the faint warmth of candlelight and the occasional distant toll of a bell. Each sheet welcomed words patiently, creating room for prayers, histories, and observations that could be shared across time. Fountain pen scribes and careful copying. In quiet workshops, scribes copied texts meticulously. Letters and characters flowed steadily from their quills, each stroke deliberate and calm. Mistakes were corrected with gentle care, often by soft dabbing of ink or by inserting small, neat additions. The act of copying became meditative, a slow dance of thought, hand, and paper. The quiet rhythm of these workshops allowed ideas to endure and spread without hurry, giving the scribes' lives a peaceful, measured flow to early libraries and the spread of knowledge. Monasteries and castles began to store paper manuscripts alongside older scrolls. Shelves lined with soft sheets and bound texts held prayers, poems, and records of daily life. Scholars moved quietly between aisles, lifting sheets to read or copy, their footsteps muffled by worn stone. The faint smell of ink mixed with wood and parchment, creating a gentle atmosphere of learning and calm. Each sheet preserved a moment in time, waiting patiently for the next hand to touch it. Artist palette illuminated manuscripts. Artists adorned paper with illustrations and delicate decorations. Gold leaf shimmered faintly under candlelight. Tiny flowers, vines, and landscapes blossomed across the page. Brushes moved slowly, following careful designs, producing work that was both beautiful and soothing. Families and students who viewed these manuscripts found themselves drawn into the gentle rhythm of observation, noticing every soft detail and letting their minds rest within the calm artistry. Yarn paper in daily medieval life. Paper gradually moved beyond monasteries and workshops into ordinary homes. Merchants kept records, families wrote letters, children practiced letters and small sketches. Recipes were noted, prayers copied, and small crafts created from folded sheets. Paper became a quiet participant in daily routines, never demanding, always supporting the rhythm of life. Its softness and flexibility made it approachable, inviting hands of all ages to interact with it patiently and gently. National park trade and travel. Traders carried paper across rivers, hills, and distant cities. Imagine bundles wrapped in cloth, tucked safely under carts or aboard ships. Buyers and sellers examined the sheets carefully, appreciating their texture and strength. Letters traveled on foot or by horse, carrying news and messages across villages, towns, and kingdoms. Paper moved slowly but persistently, connecting people and places with quiet efficiency and subtle beauty. Herb craftsmanship and refinement. Papermaking workshops in Europe refined their techniques for centuries. Artisans experimented with fibers, pulping methods, and drying techniques. Vats of pulp swirled gently as hands lifted screens, letting water drip slowly. Sheets dried on racks or boards, absorbing sunlight or warmth from fires. Each sheet bore the mark of patient attention, a soft canvas ready to carry words, drawings, and ideas. The repetition and rhythm of the craft created a quiet meditation, preserving both material and spirit. Scroll letters and communication. Letters continued to carry messages, thoughts, and emotions across distances. Envelopes, seals, and folded sheets created small rituals of writing and reading. The soft rustle of paper, the faint smell of ink, and the deliberate unfolding of messages encouraged gentle reflection. Families shared news, friends exchanged stories, and scholars sent observations across kingdoms. Paper became a bridge, linking hearts and minds with quiet patience. Crescent moon, evening reflection. As the day ends, picture quiet scriptoriums, candlelit study rooms, and sunlit courtyards. Stacks of paper rest softly, brushes and quills lie patiently, and gentle rustling fills the air as pages are turned. The history of paper, from its humble beginnings to its presence in medieval life, reminds us that small, quiet things can carry immense meaning. Let your mind settle, your breath slow, and your thoughts drift like ink across soft, patient sheets, ready to lead you gently into sleep to paper in the Renaissance. As Europe awakened to new ideas, paper quietly became a companion to creativity and discovery. Sunlight streamed through tall windows into quiet studios, illuminating stacks of smooth sheets. Artists sketched softly, capturing the gentle curve of a river, the sway of trees, or the distant horizon. Brushes glided across the paper's surface, leaving strokes that felt deliberate and meditative. Each sheet invited patience and care, turning art into a slow, satisfying rhythm that soothed both mind and hand. Open book writers and poets. Poets and scholars embraced paper for its accessibility. No longer constrained by heavy vellum, they wrote letters, stories, and reflections that could be shared more easily. Gentle scratching of quills filled quiet rooms, mixing with the soft hum of distant conversation or the faint chirping of birds outside. Each word left a delicate impression on the paper, carrying thoughts and emotions across time and space. The act of writing itself became a small ritual of calm and mindfulness. Classical building, early printing, and the spread of books. With the invention of the printing press, paper quietly transformed human knowledge. Stacks of sheets were pressed and inked slowly, producing books that could reach more people than ever before. In workshops, presses hummed a steady, soothing rhythm, sheets sliding smoothly under careful hands. Printed pages carried knowledge gently across towns and cities, allowing libraries to expand and families to gather around new books. The soft rustle of paper turning became a comforting sound, inviting slow, thoughtful reading. Paintbrush illuminated manuscripts alongside printed works. Even as printing spread, illuminated manuscripts remained cherished. Artists added soft touches of gold, delicate flowers, and tiny details to certain pages, blending traditional beauty with new accessibility. Paper welcomed both ink and paint, capturing the calm precision of careful hands. In quiet study rooms, people traced gentle illustrations with their eyes, letting each detail linger and allowing their minds to rest within the serene artistry. And for paper in daily life, paper moved quietly into households, schools, and markets. Children practiced writing slowly, merchants recorded trades with care, and families kept journals of daily events. Small notes were passed between friends, recipes preserved, and letters sent to distant relatives. The soft texture of paper invited gentle handling, turning ordinary moments into mindful experiences. Every sheet became part of a quiet rhythm, blending into the fabric of daily life without noise or urgency. Craftsmanship and refinement. Workshops experimented with fibers, water, and drying techniques to create smoother, more durable sheets. Vats of pulp were stirred carefully, screens lifted gently, and sheets dried patiently in sunlight or warm air. Artisans observed subtle variations in texture, learning to balance softness with strength. The repetitive, gentle work of papermaking became a meditative practice, connecting people to centuries of tradition while producing sheets that would carry ideas, art, and memory. Compass paper traveling with people and ideas. Traders and travelers carried paper across rivers, mountains, and seas. Letters, manuscripts, and sketches drifted slowly between towns and countries, carrying stories and knowledge with them. Scholars shared observations, merchants exchanged contracts, and artists sent drawings to distant patrons. Paper moved silently, yet persistently, linking minds and hearts across space, creating a quiet web of connection that spanned regions and generations. Scroll letters and communication in Renaissance life. Writing letters became a gentle ritual. Folding sheets, dipping quills in ink, and sealing envelopes encouraged patience and focus. Opening a letter was a soft, intimate experience. The gentle unfolding of paper, the faint scent of ink, and the calm reading of words from a distant hand. Families shared news, friends exchanged stories, and scholars discussed ideas, all with the quiet presence of paper guiding each interaction. Crescent moon, evening calm and reflection. As night descends, imagine sunlit studios turning to soft lamplight, quiet libraries with stacks of paper, and the gentle turning of pages. Brushes and pens rest patiently beside soft sheets, and the hum of daily life fades into a calm rhythm. The journey of paper, from its earliest fibers to the Renaissance workshops, printing presses, and quiet homes, invites your mind to settle. Breathe slowly, feel your body relax, and let the soft presence of paper guide you gently towards sleep, carrying centuries of human thought, creativity, and memory in its delicate, patient folds. Paper in the world of early science. As explorers and scientists began to observe the natural world, paper became their quiet companion. Delicate sheets held sketches of plants, animals, and distant landscapes. Astronomers recorded the movement of stars and planets, while natural philosophers filled notebooks with careful observations. Imagine the soft glow of candlelight in a study, the faint scratch of quill on paper, and the serene concentration of someone tracing constellations across a page. Every stroke became a meditation, a gentle rhythm that allowed both thought and hand to move slowly and steadily. Test tube experiments and notes. Scientists wrote instructions and recorded results on soft sheets, their careful words capturing moments of curiosity and discovery. Beakers and flasks sat quietly nearby, while the faint scent of herbs, oils, or minerals mingled with the subtle aroma of fresh paper. Each note, sketch, and calculation was preserved with patience, creating a lasting record of ideas. Paper became a vessel for human understanding, holding both careful thought and quiet imagination. Envelope letters and personal connections. In homes, cities, and remote villages, paper traveled with messages of love, friendship, and news. Letters were folded gently, tied with string or sealed with wax, each carrying a small world of meaning. Opening a letter was a calm, deliberate act. The soft rustle of the page, the gentle unfolding, the faint scent of ink, all inviting quiet reflection. Families exchanged stories, merchants shared updates, and scholars debated ideas, all connected by the patient journey of paper. Paper in domestic life. Paper became part of everyday routines. Families kept small diaries, noting births, marriages, and seasonal events. Children practiced writing and drawing on scraps or neat pages, learning slowly with attentive hands. Merchants recorded prices and trades carefully, while recipes and instructions were jotted down for future use. Even simple notes or reminders carried a quiet presence, adding structure and rhythm to daily life without pressure or urgency. Artist palette art and expression. Artists explored new ways to use paper. Soft sheets welcomed sketches, watercolor studies, and illustrations. Gardens, markets, and streets were captured gently on paper, preserving fleeting moments for reflection. Brushes and pens glided across the surface in slow, deliberate movements. The quiet repetition of sketching became meditative, turning observation into calm creativity. Even small, private drawings offered a chance to pause, breathe, and appreciate life's subtle details. National park paper traveling across continents. With global exploration, paper moved alongside ships, caravans, and traders. Letters, journals, and sketches traversed oceans and deserts, carrying human thought far from its origin. Merchants and travelers handled bundles of paper with care, knowing each sheet held stories, knowledge, or records. Even across vast distances, paper preserved connections, bridging cultures and communities in soft, enduring ways. Yarn craftsmanship continues. Through the centuries, papermakers refined their techniques. Fibers were chosen and prepared carefully. Vats of pulp stirred slowly, and sheets lifted and dried with patience that subtle variations in texture and color gave each sheet individuality, creating surfaces that welcomed words, sketches, and diagrams. The rhythm of making paper was gentle and repetitive, almost like a meditation, connecting human hands to centuries of quiet tradition. Scroll journals, diaries, and the human touch. Journals allowed individuals to preserve thoughts, reflections, and experiences. Opening a notebook, turning the soft pages, and gliding a pen across them became a slow, intentional. Candle quiet evenings with ink and stillness. In many homes, evenings became a tender time to write. As the sun dipped behind rooftops, families lit small lamps or candles, their golden glow trembling in the gentle currents of air. The day's tasks faded like distant echoes, and in the hush that followed, a journal might be opened. Even those who wrote only a few words found the ritual soothing. The flicker of flame, the shadow of a hand moving slowly, the soft scent of ink warmed by lantern light. It became a lullaby of its own. Paper listened carefully as someone described the faint wind that passed through their garden, or the way a neighbor's laughter drifted across the lane. Others wrote of dreams they had forgotten until the moment the quill touched the page. Sometimes there was nothing to say at all, and people simply traced small shapes in the corners of their journals. Leaves, spirals, wandering lines that soothed the mind. Paper welcomed these quiet doodles, too, holding them with the same patience it held poetry or heartfelt confessions. And all across towns and villages, these little evening rituals continued. The steady rhythm of writing brought calm to tired souls, like a soft blanket drawn slowly over the day. Leaf fluttering in wind, the soft weight of memory. As years passed, journals filled. Pages thickened with inked thoughts, with sketches, with pressed leaves tucked flat between sheets, with bits of ribbon marking special moments. People rested their hands on filled volumes and felt the soft weight of time, but they realized that paper could hold more than immediate thoughts. It could hold memories. Whole seasons lived quietly in those pages. The first snowfall a child had ever seen. The smell of bread on a morning when the whole village walked under pale golden skies. The hush of a forest path where birds chattered softly overhead. And even painful memories, once written, softened. Paper seemed to cradle them gently, taking the sharpness away. Many found peace knowing that their heartaches were no longer swirling inside them alone. They were safely placed in the quiet hands of a journal. Sometimes, after many years, someone would open an old volume and read slowly, smiling at how young their handwriting once looked, how hopeful, how uncertain, how sincere. The pages rustled like gentle leaves, and every memory whispered back. House with garden paper in ordinary homes. As journals became common, paper found its way into simple homes everywhere, not just among scholars or merchants. Its presence became part of daily routines in the most humble cottages and bustling households. People kept small stacks on tables near windows where morning light spilled warmly across the wood. They jotted down remedies shared by traveling healers, recipes whispered from one neighbor to another, reminders for tasks they might otherwise forget. Children practiced letters shaped like wobbly little branches, their tongues peeking out as they concentrated. Their first attempts at writing their own names, uneven and charming, were treasured by parents who tucked these early pages away like precious keepsakes. On long winter nights, families might gather around a hearth, and someone would read aloud from a notebook filled with stories their grandparents once told. Gentle tales of harvest seasons, festivals, or old myths of rivers and mountains. Paper became a thread connecting generations, each sheet holding small pieces of family life, preserved for whoever might one day open those pages and listen. Plowed with rain letters carried on rainy mornings. Beyond diaries and journals, paper also carried the warmth of human connection from one place to another. Letters became bridges between hearts separated by distance. In the early light of rainy mornings, messengers wrapped precious letters in cloth to protect them from the damp air. The sound of hooves or footsteps echoed through narrow streets as they set off on journeys across fields and forests. Inside those letters were words chosen with care. A father assuring his daughter that he missed her laughter. A friend describing the bustling market they had visited. Someone confessing a quiet hope or offering encouragement through difficult times. When the letters arrived, often after days or weeks, their arrival felt like sunlight breaking through a cloudy sky. Families gathered around a table and listened as someone read the message slowly, savoring every syllable. Paper made distance feel smaller. It carried voices clearly across days of travel, letting love and friendship remain steady despite the miles between people. Open book the comfort of shared stories. As communities became more familiar with paper, people began to share their own stories in small gatherings. Children sat at the feet of elders who read aloud from handwritten notes or journals. Travelers shared tales from faraway cities, sketching maps or scenes in the margins of paper as they spoke. Even those who had once been shy found that writing gave them courage. Ideas that felt too fragile to speak aloud blossomed gently when written on a soft sheet. And eventually, small groups would gather at dusk to share whatever they had written. A poem inspired by rain on a rooftop, a sketch of a bridge by the river, a memory from childhood. Paper became a quiet companion in all of this, supporting expression without demanding perfection. It held each word with unwavering acceptance. Dove moments captured before sleep. Many found that the best time to write was just before drifting off to sleep. The world was at its quietest then, with only the faint sounds of night carrying through windows, the distant hoot of an owl, the whisper of leaves stirring, the soft crackle of dying embers in a hearth. They opened their journals not to record anything important, but simply to place a few closing thoughts into the softness of paper. Perhaps they wrote a brief note about the way a candle flickered that evening, or the comforting smell of bread, or a sentence about feeling grateful for a simple act of kindness. These bedtime entries became little lanterns held gently in the palm of memory, lighting the path of days long after the ink dried. And paper, in its quiet patience, welcomed every sleepy reflection. Fallen leaf, the rhythm of passing seasons. As seasons changed, so too did the stories people wrote. In spring, journals filled with notes about budding leaves, the return of birds, and the earthy scent of freshly turned soil. In summer, pages held memories of long days, harvest preparations, and markets overflowing with fruit. Autumn brought entries filled with crisp air, golden fields, and quiet reflections during early evenings. Winter arrived with gently written thoughts of snow-covered rooftops, quiet mornings by the fire, and the peaceful hush of long nights. Paper carried the rhythm of nature through each year, becoming a timeline of changing skies, shifting winds, and human hearts moving through the cycles of life. Soft reflections of personal journeys. For some, journals became maps of inner journeys, places where they could explore feelings they didn't yet fully understand. They wrote of hopes that scared them, joys so bright they could barely describe them, and sorrows softened slowly through the act of writing. Paper never corrected them, never hurried them. It offered space. It offered stillness. It offered a way to understand life more gently. And in time, those journals became companions not just in recording life, but in discovering it. Crescent moon, and as night deepened, the world grew quiet around them. Candles burned low. Pages rustled softly. Minds settled. Hearts eased. And the story of paper, humble, patient, quietly miraculous, continued to weave itself through the fabric of countless lives, always there, always listening, always ready to hold the next thought that drifted softly into the quiet of evening. Stories folded into keepsakes. As time flowed gently onward, people began to tuck small pieces of paper into the corners of their lives. Not just journals or letters, but little keepsakes that carried memories too delicate to leave to forgetfulness. Some folded a slip of paper and placed it inside a wooden box, keeping a note from a loved one close, its edges softened by the years. Others wrote a single line from a dream they did not want to lose and slipped it into a pocket, where it traveled with them through the day like a quiet charm. There were people who pressed flowers between pages, letting their colors fade into soft pastels as seasons passed. A child might doodle a crooked drawing of their home and hide it beneath a floorboard as though storing a treasure. Paper, in its gentle emptiness, welcomed each small treasure and held it with a tenderness that could not be seen, only felt. Even the faintest ink, even the lightest pencil strokes became part of a quiet archive of lived moments. And because of this, paper became not just a material, but a companion that moved alongside human life, collecting whispers of history with each fold, each crease, each mark. Herb paper carried in travelers' packs. Those who wandered far took paper with them like a modest anchor to the places they came from. Tucked into satchels beside dried food and threadbare cloaks, small notebooks followed travelers across mountains, through forest paths, and into markets where languages mingled like colorful fabrics. On nights when stars spilled across the sky like forgotten grains of sugar, they opened their journals and wrote slowly by firelight. The pages caught snapshots of their days, the scent of pine trees, the laughter of strangers, the crack of twigs underfoot as they walked alone at dusk. Paper became a place to store homesickness gently. It allowed travelers to write the names of people they missed, over and over, until the words soothed the ache in their chest. And sometimes, when they returned home after months or years, they would hand those journals to loved ones, offering not just stories, but the quiet companionship of the paper that had been with them through every lonely morning and hopeful sunrise. Dizzy the way paper softened grief. There were moments too deep for speech, too heavy for even the warmest hug. In those times, paper became a refuge where grief could be set down, if only for a breath. People wrote letters to those who had passed away, letting their hands tremble as they formed each word. They whispered into ink what they could not say out loud: apologies, memories, gratitude, love. And although the people they wrote to could no longer answer, writing became a way to speak across the quiet distance of loss. Others filled pages with simple sentences, repeating the same thought again and again until tears blurred the ink. Paper accepted the smudges without complaint. In this way, grief became something that could be shared, even if only with a silent friend. The burden eased, if only slightly, as the story of sorrow was laid gently across a page. And sometimes, years later, someone would open those old writings and find not just pain, but proof of healing. The uneven handwriting settling slowly into steadier lines, the storm gradually softening into rain, then into mist, then into memory. Wind chimes of written blessings. In many small villages, people began hanging paper from strings to send wishes into the wind. They wrote blessings for good health, smooth harvests, or safe travels and tied them to branches, porches, or simple wooden poles. When the breeze stirred, the papers fluttered like quiet prayer flags, rustling softly as if whispering hopes to the sky. Neighbors walking by could hear the faint music of the fluttering sheets, a gentle reminder of the shared dreams of the community. Each year, the sun bleached the colors, the ink faded, the strings frayed. But people did not mind. The wishes had already carried themselves into the world, and when it was time, they wrote new ones, a cycle of hope renewed with each season. Paper, in its delicate courage, stood between people and the sky, offering their wishes to the passing wind. Some behind small cloud paper in quiet morning rituals. As dawn stretched soft fingers of light across rooftops, many people began their mornings with paper. Not hurried writing or lengthy reflection, but small, gentle moments. A single line of gratitude, a sketch of sunlight hitting a window, a note reminding themselves to breathe more deeply today. The act of placing even a few words on paper felt like opening a window inside the mind, letting fresh air in. The dew on grass sparkled outside. Birds shifted restlessly in the branches. Kettles steamed quietly on stoves. And inside, someone wrote a simple, hopeful message on the first page of a fresh sheet. A little compass pointing them toward the day with softness instead of urgency. Crescent moon nighttime stories passed down. As evening returned, families sat together by dim lamps. Children leaned sleepily against their parents. Elders cleared their throats gently, ready to share stories that had been written long ago. Some of these stories had been copied onto paper again and again, ink refreshed across generations, preserving the shape of ancient tales even as the world changed around them. And when the reading ended, the last line hanging softly in the air, the lamp flame wavering, people closed their eyes for a moment, as though listening for the echo of the story settling into the night. Paper carried these stories like small lanterns, keeping them glowing through time. Cloud with rain, rainy day thoughts softened by paper. During long rainstorms, when the world outside blurred into rippling silver, people often turned to their notebooks. Rain had a way of revealing thoughts that stayed hidden in bright weather, quieter feelings, memories tucked deep, questions that only emerged under the soft drum of water on rooftops. The sound of rain created a kind of privacy, and words flowed more easily. Some wrote poems shaped like droplets. Others described the rhythm of the storm as though translating the sky's music. And when the rain finally stopped, the paper held those reflections like small puddles that never fully evaporated. Paper as a quiet companion for artists. As centuries drifted onward, artists discovered that paper was more than a surface. It was a companion that listened. Painters dipped their brushes into muted pigments, letting colors pool softly onto fresh sheets. The paper absorbed each stroke patiently, like a friend who understood that art was a kind of breathing. Some artists preferred to sketch with charcoal, drawing slow, wandering lines that smudged gently at the edges. They didn't mind the charcoal dust that gathered on their fingertips. It felt like a small conversation between their hands and the page. Others practiced delicate outlines of plants, feathers, and gentle landscapes. Each leaf and petal found a home on paper, preserved long after the real ones faded. And for every artist, skilled or learning, paper remained welcoming. It never demanded perfection. It simply offered space, reassuring them that every mark had meaning, even if only for a moment. Sheaf of rice paper in the hands of simple villagers. Far from libraries and workshops, villagers used paper in quiet, practical ways that gave their daily lives a gentle rhythm. That a baker wrapped warm rolls in simple sheets, sending customers home with food still fragrant and comforting. Children drew small pictures on scraps, laughing when their chickens pecked curiously at the edges. A mother wrote a recipe for broth on a corner of worn paper, passing it to her daughter with a warm smile. Sometimes, villagers saved old letters in wooden drawers, not for their content alone, but because the paper carried the scent of faraway places or memories tied to loved ones. In these small moments, paper stitched itself into the humble heartbeat of everyday life, not demanding attention, simply being there, reliable, familiar, gentle. Crescent moon ink lamps and midnight writing. When night settled and candles burned low, some people found themselves awake with thoughts that refused to sleep. Instead of tossing and turning, they reached for paper. With a quiet sigh, they dipped their brushes or pens into ink, letting the soft glow of an oil lamp guide them. Each word floated onto the page like a night bird gliding across a moonlit sky. Midnight writing carried a different kind of honesty, slower, deeper, more tender. The world was quiet. Streets were empty. The clock ticked softly, or perhaps a distant dog barked once. The writer's breath paired with the faint scratch of ink, and the paper held everything with patient understanding, knowing that late-night thoughts were often the ones closest to the heart. Basket paper and market day bustle. On bustling market days, townspeople rushed through narrow lanes filled with the scent of spices, fresh fruits, and warm breads. Amid the noise and color, paper played its own subtle role. Vendors wrapped herbs in thin sheets so customers could carry home the fragrant bundles. Scribes sold small handwritten notices announcing upcoming fairs or new goods arriving by caravan. Merchants recorded trades and debts with careful strokes. Even in the lively chaos, paper remained steady, a quiet helper that brought order to the swirl of laughter, bargaining, and chatter. And sometimes, a musician would hand out slips of paper with simple lyrics for a song the village wanted to learn. Children would gather and sing as they read, their voices rising like birdsong across the market. Dove letters carried across seasons. Letters traveled long distances, crossing forests, rivers, and fields to reach the hands of those who waited. The paper folded inside each envelope held more than just ink. It held longing, affection, and the simple relief of being remembered. Messengers carried satchels filled with these paper-bound thoughts, delivering joy, comfort, or news with each soft knock at a door. Recipients often pressed the letters to their chest before reading, savoring the anticipation. And when the letters were finally opened, the scent of another home, the faint trace of a familiar ink or a shop's perfume, filled the air. Some people kept every letter they ever received, tying them with ribbon and storing them like a treasure of hearts preserved through time. Paper as a mirror for the inner world. For many, writing on paper became a way to understand themselves, not in grand declarations, but in small, thoughtful lines. Some described dreams from the night before. Others explored feelings that were difficult to speak aloud. Paper offered a quiet space where thoughts could unfurl without fear of judgment. The pages reflected hopes, uncertainties, small joys, a mirror made not of glass, but of ink and reflection. And as years passed, flipping through old notebooks felt like meeting younger versions of themselves, each page carrying a voice softened by time. Paper folded into symbols of peace. In tranquil gardens, people folded paper into gentle shapes meant to bring peace. Some crafted birds that symbolized hope. Others folded lotus flowers, believing they carried wishes for harmony. These paper creations, simple yet meaningful, floated on ponds or hung in windows where morning sunlight kissed their edges. They were reminders that even the simplest sheet of paper could become something beautiful, a messenger of calm, a gesture of quiet kindness, that stories shared by the hearth. As cold nights arrived, families gathered by the hearth. The fire crackled softly, sparks rising like fleeting stars. Someone always reached for a story written long ago on yellowed pages. The storyteller read slowly, allowing each word to settle like warm embers in the minds of the listeners. Children leaned against parents, eyelids heavy, comforted by both the warmth of the fire and the rhythm of the paper-bound tale. And when the story ended, they placed the page back into its wooden box, honoring it as a companion through countless winter nights. Leaf fluttering in wind, paper carried by wandering monks. In distant lands, monks traveled with bundles of paper rolled carefully in cloth. Along their journeys, they wrote observations about nature, the shape of a mountain, the bend of a river, the whisper of wind through ancient trees. Their words captured the serenity of the natural world. They believed that recording the quiet beauty around them helped the heart remain peaceful. Paper allowed them to preserve these sacred moments, offering future readers a glimpse of skies and landscapes that might otherwise be forgotten. Candle paper lit by candle glow. There is a special quiet that fills a room lit only by a single candle. The flame flickers gently, casting warm shadows across the page. In this soft light, writing slows. Breathing deepens. The world outside fades. Paper becomes a companion for reflection, a place to rest thoughts one by one like pebbles placed on a shore. Some wrote prayers. Others wrote simple observations of the day. A few wrote nothing at all, just resting their hands on the paper as if comforted by its presence. In the hush of candlelight, paper glowed softly, holding the calm of the moment between its fibers, paper woven into family traditions. In many homes, paper became part of small family rituals that carried warmth from one generation to the next. Every year, when the seasons shifted and the first cool breeze swept through the village, families gathered around their tables with simple sheets of fresh paper laid out before them. Elders would show the youngest how to write the family's blessings for the coming months. The handwriting varied, some letters tall and looping, others small and careful, but each carried the same tender intention. Afterward, the papers were tucked into small wooden boxes or slipped into drawers scented with lavender and cedar. Families believed these written blessings held a quiet energy, a gentle encouragement for the days ahead. Paper became the vessel of hopes whispered softly across generations, each sheet absorbing the warmth of the hands that touched it. Paper resting beside afternoon tea. On calm afternoons, when the sun sat low and cast soft honey-colored light across floorboards, people took their tea with paper close by. The quiet clink of porcelain cups mingled with the gentle rustle of pages being turned or letters being opened. Some wrote a few lines just to accompany the moment. Not important lines, not urgent ones, simply passing thoughts. The paper soaked in these small reflections like sunlight touching still water. When the tea cooled and the kettle emptied, the papers remained behind, carrying the memory of a peaceful afternoon. Even decades later, when someone stumbled across those old notes, they felt the same warmth lingering in the ink, as if the moment had never truly faded. Dubbed the kindness people left on paper. In bustling towns and quiet villages alike, people found ways to share kindness through paper. Anonymous notes tucked beneath doors offered gentle encouragement to neighbors going through difficult times. A simple line like "You are not alone" or "You matter more than you know" could brighten an entire week. Travelers sometimes left folded messages on bridges or at the base of old trees, hoping the next person passing by would find comfort in the words. Some messages were poetic, others practical, but all carried a softness of spirit that paper became a bridge between strangers, connecting hearts that might never meet in person. The world felt a little gentler because of these small acts, delicate moments inked quietly into the flow of life. Some behind small plowed paper as a morning companion for reflection. When dawn stretched awake, people often returned to their notebooks, the pages greeting them like old friends. Sunlight filtered through shutters and fell across the paper in pale gold stripes, as though marking the start of a fresh chapter. Morning reflections were simple, a gratitude for warmth, a hope for clarity, a promise to be patient with oneself. Sometimes people wrote slowly, letting each word settle like dew on grass. Other times, they wrote quickly, eager to catch a spark of inspiration before it drifted away. These morning pages didn't need to be profound. They simply helped the heart ease into the day, grounding the mind while the world still felt tender and quiet. Some behind rain cloud paper carried through seasons of change. As years turned like pages in a vast book, paper traveled through all the seasons of a person's life. In spring, people pressed fresh flowers between pages, capturing blossoms before the rains washed them away. Children drew the first birds returning to the sky, their tiny sketches filled with excitement. In summer, paper held maps for journeys, hand-drawn paths, directions to hidden streams, or lists of ripe fruits gathered under warm sun. In autumn, people wrote reflections about harvests, friendships, and the bittersweet passage of time as leaves fell like turning pages. And in winter, paper became the record of dreams formed beside crackling fires, each word warming the soul as frost crept across the windows. Through every season, paper remained constant, a companion that embraced change with gentle acceptance. Sparkles paper keeping stories safe for future hearts. There were stories so precious that people feared they might be forgotten if not written. Tales of ancestors who braved storms, of friendships formed under starlight, of lessons learned quietly over many years. To preserve these memories, families turned to paper. They wrote carefully, knowing each word might someday guide a great-grandchild or inspire someone not yet born. Paper became a vessel of legacy, carrying the laughter, wisdom, and tenderness of lives long past. Even when hands grew old and shaky, the desire to leave something behind remained steady. And centuries later, when someone discovered those writings, tucked in chests, hidden in attics, preserved in libraries, the hearts of the past spoke again, soft as wine through the branches. Deal lamp paper illuminated by lantern light. In communities where lanterns glowed like warm stars, people gathered to read stories aloud from delicate sheets of paper. The lanterns flickered gently, their light dancing across the written words. Listeners leaned close, drawn in by the quiet rhythm of the storyteller's voice. The soft glow made the ink shimmer faintly, almost as if the story itself breathed. These gatherings were small and intimate. A few neighbors, a few children, perhaps a wandering traveler invited to join. The stories, though simple, carried a magic born from stillness. Paper held this magic gracefully, releasing it through the storyteller's voice in gentle waves. White flower paper for quiet celebrations. Not all celebrations were loud or grand. Many were soft, thoughtful moments marked with the help of paper. People wrote blessings on small tags and tied them to blooming branches during festivals of renewal. Couples exchanged handwritten vows folded in silk cloth, reading them in whispers only the trees could overhear. Families crafted simple decorations, humble chains, lanterns, or banners, cut from colorful sheets. Even in their simplicity, these paper creations carried joy, their delicate forms rustling softly in the breeze. In times of gratitude, people wrote notes for those they loved, thanking them for their kindness. These notes were often kept for years, tucked away in drawers like cherished echoes of affection. Wind chime wishes carried into the night. On warm evenings, when the sky stretched dark and serene, communities released paper lanterns into the night. Each lantern carried a handwritten wish, a hope for healing, a dream for the future, a prayer for someone far away. As the lanterns rose slowly, their light reflected on the faces below, gentle and full of longing. The sky filled with floating points of warm amber, drifting higher until they resembled new constellations born from human hearts. And even after the lanterns disappeared into the darkness, the wishes remained, resting softly in the minds of those who sent them upward. Crescent moon paper as the last companion before sleep. When the day's tasks were done and the world quieted, people often returned to their paper one final time before sleep. A line about the day, a thought they wished to remember, a reminder to be gentle with themselves tomorrow. Writing at night felt like setting down small weights carried through the hours. Once the ink dried, the mind softened, unburdened, and the paper, patient as always, held these final reflections tenderly, guarding them until morning arrived again, a paper resting beneath moonlit windows. On peaceful nights when the moon glowed softly through the window, people often left their journals lying open on their tables, as though letting the moonlight read their stories. The pale light touched the pages with a silvery calm, making the ink appear almost blue, like thoughts drifting underwater. Sometimes, someone would wake briefly in the middle of the night, not fully, only enough to shift under their blankets, and their eyes would fall on those moonlit pages. Even from a distance, the sight of paper resting quietly brought comfort, as if the room itself were keeping watch. The moonlight and the papers shared a quiet companionship, each holding stillness in their own way. The night breathed gently around them, and sleep came easier knowing the world was calm, and every word written earlier remained safe, glowing faintly in that soft lunar hush paper used for gentle bedtime rituals. In many homes, parents created small bedtime rituals with paper. They wrote tiny stories for their children, short enough to finish before the flame of a bedside candle grew too low. These stories were simple, about friendly animals, cozy cottages, wandering clouds, gentle tales meant to close the day with warmth. Children learned to expect the soft rustle of paper just as much as the good night kiss on their forehead. Sometimes they asked to hold the story themselves, tracing the letters with sleepy fingers, feeling the faint texture of the ink. When the story ended, the parent folded the paper and set it aside. The child's breathing slowed. Their eyes fell half shut. Sleep arrived like a soft blanket being placed lovingly over their thoughts. Paper helped guide them into dreams, its presence cozy and familiar, like a friend waiting patiently beside the pillow. Maple leaf paper pressed with autumn leaves. As autumn painted the world in deep oranges, faded yellows, and warm browns, people found joy in pressing leaves between sheets of paper. They chose the most beautiful ones, leaves shaped like little stars, leaves with veins that looked like delicate maps, leaves touched with the first blush of winter. Sandwiched between pages and heavy books, the leaves dried over time. When the books were finally opened, the preserved leaves lay thin and delicate, their colors softened but still glowing with the memory of autumn sunlight. Some people glued these leaves onto the covers of their journals. Others saved them in envelopes or used them to mark pages. The paper held not just the leaves, but the season itself, like a quiet echo of crisp air and distant bonfires. Candle paper warmed by the glow of a home. In the heart of winter, when nights stretched long and windows frosted over, people gathered around their hearths with paper on their laps. The firelight created a warm circle in the room, and within that circle, the paper glowed softly. Writing by firelight had its own tenderness. The flickering flames made the ink shimmer, and sometimes a spark would pop. unexpectedly, making the writer pause mid-sentence, smiling at the familiar sound. On these cold nights, paper felt almost alive, warmed by the breath of the fire and the gentle focus of those who held it. It became part of the warmth of home, a small yet meaningful presence in evenings filled with quiet conversation, steaming cups of tea, and the soft crackle of logs settling in the fireplace. Blossom paper carrying gentle wisdom. Elders often used paper to pass on small pieces of wisdom, not grand instructions for life, but simple truths learned slowly over many years. Advice written on paper carried special weight, perhaps because ink makes thoughts feel permanent, or because writing requires intention, or maybe because paper itself feels patient enough to hold the lessons gently. Some elders wrote a line each day, creating collections of soft wisdom. Be kind even when tired. Listen to the quiet moments. Slow steps still move forward. Beauty grows in small places. These papers were kept in boxes, tucked into books, pinned above desks, slipped into pockets. Whenever someone needed them, the gentle words waited, ready to offer comfort without urgency. Some behind raincloud paper protecting stories from storms. Rainstorms sometimes came with sudden intensity, drumming heavily on rooftops, rattling shutters, and sending people scurrying to close windows. In those moments, people instinctively checked on their papers, their journals, letters, sketches, recipes, blessings, making sure they stayed dry. They stored them in wooden chests, woven baskets, or simple cloth wraps. While the wind howled outside, the papers rested safely, guarded from the storm's wildness. After the rain passed, people opened the windows again. Fresh air swept through, carrying the scent of wet earth and clean sky. They returned to their papers with relief and appreciation, grateful that these quiet companions had weathered the storm unharmed. Paper, though delicate, endured countless seasons this way, protected by the affection of those who cherished the memories it held. Wind-faced paper carried in traveling storytellers' satchels. Wandering storytellers, drifting from village to village, often kept their tales written on long scrolls of paper. They carried these scrolls rolled snugly inside leather satchels alongside simple instruments, dried fruit, and drinking flasks. When they arrived in a town, people gathered eagerly to hear them speak. Sometimes they unrolled the paper and read directly from it. Other times, they knew the story by heart, but kept the paper close as a reminder of its origin. The paper gathered creases from travel, softened at the edges by years of use. But each crease was a mark of life lived, of mountains crossed, fires waited beside, roads walked under rain and sun. The story survived because the paper survived, and both were cared for with quiet devotion. Fog paper as a resting place for forgotten dreams. There were dreams people held once, dreams that no longer guided their lives, but still lingered softly in their hearts. Old papers held these dreams gently, abandoned poems, unfinished drawings, plans that never came to be. Some might have felt like failures, but paper never judged them. To paper, every dream was worthy of being held. When people found these old pages later in life, they smiled with a kind of tenderness reserved for old memories. The dreams no longer hurt. They simply felt like echoes of who they once hoped to become. Paper preserved these forgotten pieces, not as burdens, but as reminders of the many paths a heart can wander. Crescent moon paper as a quiet doorway to sleep. As the night deepened and the world softened into silence, people often read a few lines from their journals or wrote a final short thought before closing their eyes. The act of touching paper, the smoothness beneath fingertips, the faint fiber texture had a grounding effect. It calmed the mind, slowed the heartbeat, eased the breath. Once the page was closed, sleep drifted closer, wrapping the person in stillness. And the paper remained where it was placed, resting on a bedside table, waiting gently for tomorrow. Paper waiting in the hush before dawn. In the dim hour when night has not yet left, but morning has not yet arrived, a quiet blue rests over the world. The air is cool. The streets are empty. Even the birds wait. During this fragile in-between, many people left their journals open on their desks. The soft pre-dawn light touched the pages gently, almost shyly, as though it didn't want to wake the ink too quickly. When someone rose early, not out of urgency, but simply because their soul stirred, they sat beside this faint light and read lines they had written the night before. Thoughts that felt heavy in darkness often felt softer in dawn's pale glow. Solutions appeared. Worry shrank. Hope breathed again. The paper didn't change overnight, but people did, and the page became a mirror for that quiet transformation. Full moon paper as a lantern for wandering thoughts. Sometimes, thoughts drifted like fireflies in the mind, flickering, glowing, disappearing. If left unheld, they might fade. But when someone reached for paper, those flickering thoughts found a place to land. On the page, they glowed more steadily. They took the shape of words, sketches, diagrams, or gentle lists of possibilities. Writing them down felt like placing a lantern along a winding path, so one wouldn't lose the way. People didn't need their thoughts to be perfect. They just needed a place for them. And paper offered that willingly. Without expectation, paper used to wrap small treasures. In many households, paper was used not only for writing, but for protecting delicate keepsakes. A dried flower from a lover, a lock of a child's hair, a ribbon from a festival, a charm passed down through generations. The paper wrapped around these treasures crinkled softly, its fibers absorbing the faint scent of old wood, warm skin, or pressed petals. Whenever someone opened these quiet bundles, memory rushed out like a gentle breath. The treasures were small, but the feelings woven into them were vast. Paper held them patiently, knowing that the smallest things often carry the deepest love. Crescent moon paper guiding travelers through long nights. Merchants, pilgrims, and wanderers carried paper maps with them as they crossed long distances. The inked lines showed rivers, roads, forests, and towns, though the maps were not always perfectly accurate. Still, they offered direction in the uncertain dark. Under stars, travelers unfolded the paper carefully, using moonlight or a flickering lantern to see faint markings. The map might flutter in the wind. The edges might be worn from many nights. But it brought reassurance, a sense that the world, though vast, could be understood one path at a time. And as they walked, the rustle of paper in their satchels reminded them they were not entirely lost. Leaf fluttering in wind paper, turning fragile with age. As years passed, paper naturally softened and thinned. Edges yellowed, corners curled. Ink faded into a gentle ghost of its original boldness. But age did not diminish its value. If anything, it deepened it. People touching the old pages did so with reverence, whispering over them with careful fingertips. Every crease, every stain, every brittle crack carried a story, not just of what was written, but of who had touched the page, who had folded it, who had kept it safe through seasons and storms. Paper aged the way people do, softly, beautifully, revealing history in every line. Paper carrying messages between hearts. Letters written during long separations held emotions too big to say aloud. Lovers wrote tender confessions. Friends shared hopes. Families sent news across great distances. For the one receiving the letter, the moment of opening, it was almost sacred. Fingers trembled. Eyes softened. Breathing slowed. The paper was not just paper, it was presence. The sender's thoughts became touchable. Their absence felt smaller. Even years later, people kept these letters in bundles tied with string, their words still warm with the feelings once poured into them. Waxing crescent moon paper whispering secrets in dim candlelight. In quiet rooms lit by a single candle, people confessed their deepest truths onto paper, things they could not say aloud, even to those they loved most. The candle flickered gently as the ink flowed. Sometimes the writing was slow and careful. Other times it was rushed, as though the thoughts needed to escape before courage faded. The paper kept those secrets close, never revealing, never betraying, just holding, just listening, just being a soft place for heavy hearts. Fog paper absorbing the silence of empty rooms. In abandoned homes or forgotten corners of attics, old notebooks slept beneath dust. The silence around them grew thick, yet the papers remained intact, quiet guardians of stories nobody had read in decades. Sometimes, someone exploring an attic opened these notebooks by accident. The silence broke. The room stirred. A breath of old ink rose into the air. And suddenly, lives once vanished became briefly alive again. The paper called out from the quiet, reminding the world that memory never disappears completely. It only waits to be found. Waning crescent moon paper guiding the slow healing of the heart. When grief pressed heavily on someone's chest, when the world seemed colorless, when days blurred into one another, writing became a lifeline. People wrote a line, a sentence, a paragraph, small pieces of their pain released onto the page. Paper accepted everything gently, never rushing, never judging. Over time, the pages grew. So did the writer. And though the pain did not disappear entirely, it softened, like morning frost melting in sunlight. Paper did not heal the wound, but it made the healing possible. Paper as a soft companion on lonely evenings. On evenings when the world outside felt too large or too quiet. Many people found comfort simply by sitting with a blank sheet of paper. The candle would glow softly on the table, shadows moving slowly across the walls. Outside, the wind might hum through the trees, or a distant bell might ring from a nearby tower. In that gentle solitude, the paper became a companion, silent, patient, open. Some people wrote to pass the time. Others wrote to soothe a restless mind. And some just rested their hand on the page, not writing anything at all, simply feeling the stillness settle around them. The paper didn't require words to offer comfort. Its quiet presence was enough. Wind-faced paper catching the breezes of open windows. As windows were opened to let in cool night air or warm morning light, sheets of paper often fluttered softly, rising and falling like slow breaths. Scribbled notes rustled. Unfinished drafts shifted slightly. Sometimes a single page lifted just enough to reveal the writing underneath, as though peeking curiously at the world. The sound of paper moving in a gentle breeze was a whisper of life, a reminder that even still rooms could breathe. Many people found this soft rustling soothing, a small, tender noise that blended seamlessly with the world's quieter moments. Some behind small cloud paper marking the turning of seasons. Scribes and everyday folk alike noticed how different seasons changed the feel of the page. In spring, the air carried a faint sweetness, and paper seemed almost eager to be written on, absorbing ink smoothly. In summer, warm breezes dried fresh ink quickly, and notebooks traveled outdoors for sketching gardens and markets. Autumn brought crisp air and crackling parchment sounds as pages turned beneath chilly fingertips. Winter, with its stillness, made writing feel like building a small fire of thought to warm the mind. Paper moved through the year just as people did, quietly adapting, quietly enduring. Hindu temple paper protected inside temples and archives. Deep inside temples, old scrolls rested in long wooden shelves. Archivists padded softly through the halls, mindful not to disturb the hush that wrapped the ancient texts. The scrolls lay there like sleeping elders, full of centuries-old wisdom. Their fibers held prayers, laws, poems, stories, and the careful records of lives long past. Candles flickered in small alcoves, illuminating the edges of the pages but never burning too close. The caretakers bowed their heads respectfully as they worked, treating each scroll as though it were alive. Paper here was sacred, not because of ink alone, but because of the human hands that had carried those words through time. Thread paper and the hands that crafted it. Long before someone wrote on a sheet, artisans shaped it with patience. They soaked fibers, pressed them, lifted fragile sheets from frames, and dried them beneath warm sunlight. Their hands grew familiar with the rhythms of water and pulp. Some worked in silence. Others hummed gently as they smoothed the sheets with flat stones. They knew the way paper responded to touch, how it softened, how it resisted, how it wished to lie flat or curl slightly at the corners. Every sheet they made was a small act of care. Later, when writers held those pages, they unknowingly held the tenderness of the maker's hands as well. Crescent moon paper near crackling fires on long nights. In winter, families often gathered near warm hearths. While others spoke quietly or sewed or drifted toward sleep, someone might sit close to the fire with a notebook resting on their knee. The orange glow danced across the page, making the ink shimmer faintly. The soft crackle of burning wood filled the room with a weighted calm. Writing in firelight was different, slower, more reflective. The warmth seemed to guide the pen gently, encouraging softer thoughts and peaceful memories. Paper written beneath fire's glow often carried a quiet intimacy that daylight could not replicate. Sheaf of rice paper recording the rhythms of country life. In farming villages, people used paper to note the changing skies, the best times to plant, the arrival of migrating birds, and the shape of each season's harvest. These notes were simple, written with steady hands accustomed to hard work. They recorded the height of crops, the first frost, the days of rain, and the sound of distant storms. The pages smelled faintly of earth and grain dust, and sometimes a stray seed or dried petal became trapped between them. In this way, paper became a diary of nature's slow heartbeat. Those who later read these notes felt the landscape breathe through the pages. Dia lamp paper illuminated by oil lamps in quiet rooms. Before candles were common, oil lamps glowed softly in clay or bronze holders. Their light was gentle, wavering, almost shy. Scribes wrote near these lamps with narrowed eyes, but they cherished the softness of the glow. Shadows moved slowly on the walls as though drifting in thought. The paper beneath their pens looked warm, golden, and calm under lamplight. Words written in these hours felt almost dreamlike, as if they floated rather than rested on the page. Mantelpiece clock paper holding the weight of time without complaint. Paper carried years quietly. It changed color softly, like fruit ripening. It accepted creases and wrinkles without resistance. Time might press heavily on the world, but paper surrendered to it gently. Even when cracked or torn, it remained dignified. People often felt a soft sadness mixed with wonder when holding an old page. The way it trembled slightly, the way it seemed to breathe age through its fibers. Paper never fought against time. It embraced it. And in doing so, it preserved the very things time tried to fade. Honeypot paper in kitchens filled with warmth. Recipes scribbled on paper traveled through families for generations. Flour-dusted hands. Touch the corners. Small stains, a drop of honey, a smudge of butter, became part of the page's character. Many kitchens kept these papers tucked inside drawers or pinned to walls near the hearth. Each time the page was unfolded, it carried the scent of spices and warm bread. Paper in kitchens became more than instructions. It became the flavor of memory. New moon paper resting beside sleeping dreamers. After writing late into the night, many people left notebooks beside their beds. Sometimes their final sentence trailed off, the ink blotting slightly where sleep overtook them. The paper stayed there quietly through the night, holding half-formed dreams, unfinished thoughts, and the soft warmth of a hand that had rested upon it moments before. When morning arrived, sunlight gently touched the open page as if waking it, and the dreamer, now stirring slowly, found their thoughts exactly where they had left them, waiting patiently, peacefully, as paper always does, paper returning to silence. As centuries passed and countless hands touched its surface, paper gently fulfilled each purpose given to it. It held laughter and sorrow, dreams and discoveries, recipes and poems, maps and memories. It traveled through empires and villages, across oceans and deserts, from temples to small cottages warmed by simple fires. And in all those journeys, it remained humble, never demanding attention, never asking for praise. Just being present, quiet, ready. Eventually, every piece of paper returned to stillness. Some remained cherished in wooden chests. Some slept in libraries that smelled of dust and wisdom. Some curled with age inside forgotten drawers. Some dissolved back into the earth, leaving only faint whispers behind. But none truly disappeared. The thoughts they carried lingered in minds, in families, in traditions, in the very shape of the world. Paper helped build civilizations not with noise, but with gentleness. Its legacy was never loud. It was steady, patient, soft, waning crescent moon paper as a quiet companion to the passing years. In the end, what made paper so extraordinary was not just its invention or its uses, but the way it walked beside humanity, step by step, word by word, story by story. It never hurried, never pushed, never tried to shine brighter than the one writing upon it. It simply supported the mind, the heart, the memory. And one day, far in the future, when people look back on all the eras long gone, they will see a thread woven through every age. A thread made of thin, humble sheets that carried the world's thoughts. Paper will be remembered not as an object, but as a companion, one that helped humans understand themselves, helped them dream, helped them speak across time. Candle a gentle closing. And now, as we drift toward the end of this story, imagine a small table in a quiet room. A single sheet of paper rests there, touched by soft moonlight. A faint breeze rustles its edge. Somewhere far away, a bell chimes. The night is calm, spacious, unhurried. The story of paper, how it was born, how it traveled, how it held human hearts, now settles like dust in a sunbeam, peaceful and complete. You may picture that single sheet, glowing faintly in the stillness, waiting for no one, yet open to anyone. Empty, yet full of history. Silent, yet rich with meaning. And as the night deepens around you, allow your thoughts to soften, just as paper softens with time. Let your breath slow, your body loosen, your mind settle like a feather drifting downward. Safe, steady, calm. The story is ending now, but its quiet warmth stays with you, like the soft glow of a lantern after the flame has dimmed, like the final whisper of ink drying on a page, like the comfort of knowing that even simple things can hold entire worlds. Rest now. The paper has done its part, and so have you. Good night, Crescent Moon Sparkles.